Is he good enough to be a target for Philadelphia?
Wow, is that interesting?
All right, should we talk about Ingram?
Yeah, I mean, the reporting out of there seems to indicate that they realize they have to make a financial decision and that they can't go back in time and undo the CJ McCollum extension. So now they're going to have to move Ingram because they think that Trey Murphy is probably a better fit with Zion, which I agree on. I still am like, I'm kind of like, well, I don't love the fit of Zion and Ingram, but there also are other fit questions as well. Like if you could get the right center or the right point guard around those guys and then play Trey Murphy at the two, like that would be pretty good. But they also, I don't think they want to give Ingram that max extension. And so,
Yeah.
like, if you let me ask you this, because it seems like they're going to try to move him. I think it's more about who would want to acquire Ingram than who they would want to be trading him for. I think you have to start there of just where would Ingram himself be a good fit.
Right. And when you go through each team, there's so many teams where you're just like, like maybe.
Well, and also the financial component too. I'm sure New Orleans would love to get some salary relief,
Yeah.
but they
Let me.
also, but then of course they're going to be looking for guys who can play as well. Like they need a center. They'll immediately need another wing. Maybe if they move Ingram and get salary relief, they can afford to re-sign Najee Marshall, and he kind of takes on a larger role.
What do you think about Ingram in Utah?
Well, yeah, Utah. I mean, they're going to use most of their cap space on Markkanen. Yeah, I wonder what Danny Ainge thinks of him. Yeah, it's like it's okay, I guess. They don't have a lot of long-term salary commitment, but then so if you're the core of your team is now Markkanen and Ingram, those guys aren't a bad fit together offensively, but those are your two guys on max contracts, and then you just keep drafting all the draft picks that you have until you come up with somebody else.
I
I,
guess,
I,
yeah,
I
that
think to me that's not like Ingram is, he's one of the best players that you're going to trade for. You also have to find out, see, that Ingram has control over this process too, because he can just say, I'm not going to resign. He only has 1 year left on his deal.
yeah.
But
Is
but
he
I
is
think he's low enough on the totem pole that if a team is like, yeah, we'll give you a max extension for 30% of the salary cap for 4 years, he should and will just take that.
is he good enough to be a target for Philadelphia?
Wow, is that interesting? He does give them an element that they don't have. He doesn't make like that much right now. They could still even probably sign one more guy who would be like, a starter level player and room exception. Now, but then again, like they can't really send back a player for New Orleans. Like, does it get to the point in New Orleans? Because David Griffin was like, we don't believe this mix has worked. We have to make major changes. Like that doesn't sound like someone who like it sounds like he's got some pressure on. Willie Green's got some pressure on. Like they don't want to take a
Yeah.
step back. It's just like that's the hardest thing about all these. It's just like these are
Yeah.
not teams where it's like, all right, it just hasn't worked. This guy's at the end of his contract. We just got to move him. Right? Like
You
those are
got
the easy ones.
yeah. So, because if you're doing this deal with Philly, you're really doing a three-way trade where you're taking your $36 million trade exception and getting something with it. You're getting a player for
Now
Daniel
maybe they could
Jones.
do that. Yeah, maybe they could do that because they have their own kind of draft pick stuff going forward. They got some young players. But that also doesn't give them the salary relief they need with Murphy's extension kicking in next offseason.
Yeah, it's a tricky needle to thread because you want something back, but
Yeah.
you still
Uh,
have to manage this salary game in the out years, and you're in a market where you just can't go in the tax.
I mean, that CJ extension was just ludicrous. It was absolutely ludicrous that they did that at the end. I mean, it was bad enough to trade for it. People are like, oh yeah, they made the playoffs as the 9 seed. Congratulations, Paul George got COVID and you got to lose in 6 to an injured Suns team, which is like okay, that's the high water mark of this era. It looks great after you did that in a year when Zion was out for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like you're just paying a guy who's, a borderline starter and doesn't really defend next to 2 other guys who don't defend. Like that was the fit of him was never any good with those 2 guys. It was just like, oh, we need somebody here right now. And then they extended him to it and they also got lucky that the draft pick cost wasn't as bad because they did make the playoffs, which they probably didn't deserve to that year.
Yeah, they got very fortunate on that. Exactly.
Like they gave up. It should have been a lottery pick for him, and they just instead it ended up being this 2025 Bucks pick that it reverted to. So anyway, that's why they're in this massive financial crunch. If they didn't have CJ, they could probably just re-sign Ingram and deal with this later. And kind of go more of just a 3-and-D type of point guard.
Yeah, because they still need to get a center somehow too.
Yeah, they don't have a center. I mean, they have Larry Nance, and that's it under contract for next year.
Yeah, and the only mechanism they have is the non-taxpayer mid-level exception or re-signing Valanciunas with bird rights.
But yeah, that's probably gonna happen. Even though I think they would love to not do it, I just don't know how they. I mean, like, I don't think they have the scratch for Hartenstein. I mean, would the Knicks be interested in Ingram? Doesn't seem that way, right? Like, he's way too duplicative and worse than Brunson in terms of where they like to operate offensively.
Yeah.
And Ingram for Randall, Randall is not a good fit with Zion. Yeah, I mean, I want to just go, so you said Utah. Who else would be interested in Ingram? Would the
Raptors?
Would the Memphis Grizzlies be interested in Ingram?
Oh.
I mean, I guess they got Bane and Ja already, so probably not. It's also because Ingram doesn't really defend that well. That's sort of the problem with his fit. But, would Brandon Clark, Marcus Smart, and, some future draft capital? I mean, they got the number 9 pick this year, too.
Yeah.
So that would they consider that? I mean, I still think you're kind of. That's pretty tough when you got to re-sign Jaren also, but I mean that's a lot of talent on one team.
That's interesting. You actually could do it with Clark and Kennard. You'd probably be too expensive though. You'd probably have to decline that Kennard option.
Could OKC be an Ingram team?
Man, I can't see that. I just think he's a worse version of Jalen Williams.
Could Orlando be an Ingram team?
Yeah, you see, I thought about them. They already have 2 forwards who handle the ball a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, right?
So you're either asking Franz to play 2 or you're asking Paolo to play 5, right?
And you could. What about the Sacramento Kings?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they have enough to send back that New Orleans would love. I don't think they would move Keegan Murray for him.
I think they have a little bit of a love fest with Murray, but like, is the 13th pick Kevin Huerter? It would have to be like Huerter and Barnes, I guess.
I think where it ends, because the logical, quote unquote, logical trade is for some bad team that wants to start sniffing around the playoffs, like a Detroit or gulp Portland.
Yeah.
To get Ingram, he's just the perfect sort of player for that kind of team that has these limited ambitions where they just need someone to score with some size, but who's not really a guy who's gonna get you much beyond the first round of the playoffs as one of the main guys.
Yeah, I think Detroit.
But then New Orleans also,
for all of these guys, Detroit's definitely gonna be.
I think so too.
Because they're just sick of losing. They're going to try to at least be average.
But yeah, I mean, so who, sign and trade Fontecchio and Isaiah Stewart. Actually, like, not horrendous for New Orleans. But you just,
Yeah.
because the question with these bad teams is, it's like, how does New Orleans actually, like, get a player back for him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe Jaden Ivey is someone that could kind of be a fit in New Orleans.
They also, there are some shenanigans they could potentially do where they pick up Fournier's option and like use cap room and then do a trade with Fournier and something else
Yeah.
to match Ingram.
Yeah, so I mean, that's gonna be tough. I like so many of these. As I sit here today with you, I'm like, yeah, what is the trade? What is the trade? But I mean, some of these guys are going to get traded. And I'm fascinated to see what it's going to be.
Yeah, because you're right. We're in the situation where there's almost too many teams trying to win. There's not enough teams with cap room. But even the teams that have cap room, because I think they think they're in this overwhelming position because they know there are teams that want to get rid of players. But these teams that want to get rid of players don't just want to get rid of them; they want to get players back. And so,
yeah, right.
that's the conundrum.
Ingram does seem like kind of a ballsy player.
Oh wow! Oh, that would require the Chicago Bulls to complete a trade.
Yeah, but like could Caruso be in that deal? Is that like a big appeal there for New Orleans? Bulls have their own salary issues. God, DeRozan and Ingram on the same team. I mean, maybe that leads to the Bulls letting DeRozan go. I don't know where he goes.
Yeah, it'd be like Caruso and Ball, right?
Yeah, although once he gets traded, then you can't get an injury exclusion on him.
Yeah, and there's an insurance thing with that too that could complicate things too. Yeah, so it's just hard to find that right fit. What about would Toronto? I don't know if this makes a ton of sense for New Orleans. Like, is there something you could do with R.J. Barrett for Ingram?
I think they want to see what's going to happen with RJ, and he's Canadian and stuff. I don't know if Ingram's like that much of an upgrade over him.
Hmm.
I love this dynamic. You propose stuff, and I say it's never going to work. This is a great podcast. What about the Lakers for Ingram?
Bring him back.
Reeves actually would be a pretty good fit in New Orleans. We don't know what's happening with D'Angelo Russell, obviously, either. Even Hachimura wouldn't be a terrible fit in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you could play him up front in some units with Zion, even though neither of those guys rebounds, they at least kind of look tall out there.
Yeah. Yeah, you could play
big
Reeves
in Zion's case.
Yeah, or I'm sorry, Reeves and Hachimura would be the package, yeah. And then it's just what do you do? Doing picks wise on top of that. I think that's one of those things where if the Lakers get to plan F, that might be on the board. Kind of similar to the Philadelphia scenario.